Internet, and welcome back to the Geekin Dad Podcast. I am Kyle Johnson, your ever-present host, and on episode 8, which would be today's, I have a pretty awesome dude. This dude's been on YouTube for about 6 years. He's been hardcore for 4. He's been solo for 2. He's got an awesome son who has an amazing story behind him. He is a dad. He's a rock star. He's a 3D printer. He is all over the place. He is Jerry Berg, aka Barnacules. In this interview, we get to learn a lot about what it's like for him to be a parent. We learn a lot about Xander, his son, and we learn a lot about how, at the end of the day, kids are kids, no matter what. And I think that you will enjoy this conversation. Be warned, there is a super long story in here, but it is well worth the listen, and it is very, very eye-opening. So, with that out of the way, but leaving you hanging, please enjoy this conversation with Jerry Berg, aka Barnacules. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Geekin Dad Podcast. Today, I have one of the most entertaining guys on YouTube, if not for his PJ wearing self oftentimes. I have Jerry Berg, although you probably know him on the internet as Barnacules. Nerdgasm. Welcome, Jerry.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I am super excited to have you on because you have one of the most interesting journeys in YouTube. You have an interesting journey as a parent, and combining the tech that you love, plus the parenting, plus the YouTubing, plus the Microsofting or not Microsofting, and there's just a whole lot of interesting going on that's super cool, and I would love to dive into. So the first thing that I figure we should get out of the way is, how old is Xander now?
Xander is 6 years old.
And he has, we talked about this, and it's PDD.
Yeah, PDD-NOS, which is a form of autism. Well, actually, it's a lack of classification of which form of autism he has, basically. And it literally stands for pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. And the not otherwise specified means they really, really don't put him into any class, meaning he doesn't have Asperger's, he doesn't have, there's other different types of autisms that they classify children in, extreme, high functioning, stuff like that. He sits at the high functioning side, but he's all over the place where he has problems and where he excels. And so that's where they usually put that diagnosis on the kid. It's like, for instance, he struggled with communication. It took a lot of therapy to get the communication side working, and in motor coordination and stuff like that. But then he excelled at other things like memory, and his personality and how he interacted with other children and everything was fine for the most part. So it's kind of weird. It's like selective. I don't want to call it selective autism, but it kind of is. I mean, some things he needs help with and others he doesn't, but he's most definitely in the spectrum.
Yeah, and if any of you know or have watched Jerry on anything online with Xander, the one thing that you will immediately notice that Xander definitely excels at is always being in a great mood. And if you haven't, just go find him on Twitter, on YouTube, anywhere, and you will see very quickly just how full of life and excitement Xander is, and it's pretty cool to see. When you're working and playing with, not when you're working with him, but when you're playing with him, it seems like both of y'all can really play together, especially now that he's 6, in a real almost on an even playing field might be a way to put it. What's it like playing games, and what does he like to play the most?
This is the funny thing about him is most kids really want to be the person doing the thing you're doing. Like if you're bouncing the ball or throwing the ball or playing the video game, they want to be the one doing it, and you usually have to fight your kid to share. In Xander's case, he actually really enjoys kind of backseat driving on everything. So, his favorite thing in the world is to play Forza on Xbox, and specifically Forza 5 is his favorite, but he also tolerates Forza 6, which is my favorite. And he likes to sit there and watch me play, and he likes to help me select the cars. He likes the color of the cars. He likes to tell me how to drive. He knows all the names of all the tracks, all the names of the cars and the brands. He's got this super in-depth knowledge of the game, but little desire to actually play it. When I give him the controller, he might try to do a lap or something like that, but then he gets a little bit frustrated and he just hands it back, and he just gets a lot of joy out of watching me drive and then him basically telling me what to do. And so it's a little bit different than I see with other kids. that actually want to be more hands-on, and they want to be the ones playing the game, and they want to be the ones doing everything. Xander's not quite like that. He kind of derives joy from observing and kind of being a backseat part to it.
So he's like the ideal Twitch chat participant.
Absolutely. Andy's the greatest wingman, because anytime I want to go play video games, I can go sit down, and if he's playing a game, he will just hand me the controller, because the second I'm around, he wants to shift into backseat driving mode. But if I'm not in the room, he'll go in there and he'll play the game on his own, which is wonderful. But if I'm there, he wants me to be playing.
That's awesome. And how like into tech is he? Since you're a big tech tuber and into the 3D printing especially, like how big into tech has he become? Or is he just like got a passive enjoyment and fascination because of your enjoyment and fascination with it?
I would say that he has a pass. Yeah, I would say that it's passive. I'd say that that's pretty accurate. He doesn't really understand what technology means so much as he just kind of accepts it. It's almost like, you know, you and I would just take something for granted, like a refrigerator that, you know, pours water out of it when you put a cup in front of it. He kind of takes technology for granted in that same way. Like, for instance, he has an iPad, and he picks up every morning he wakes up, he goes to the charger and he takes his iPad off and he goes and plays his ABC mouse learning games, and then after that, then he goes and records himself doing videos because he likes to emulate what I do. So he says, you know, hey, this is, you know, mini Barnacules, and he does his little show and records it, and then comes back and plays it back to me and then deletes it. But he just accepts technology and takes it completely for granted. Like, it's rare for me to show him something and he's just like blown away by it. He just gets like excited and he's like, yeah, that's how it should be. Like, I don't know how to really explain it, but like 3D printing, I showed it to him, and within like 30 seconds, he's like telling me how the 3D printer worked. He's like, oh, that thing moves, and it puts the stuff comes out of the end. He's like, he likes to try to teach you about things, even though he doesn't really know about them. Maybe he's more my son than I know, but that's kind of his way of accepting everything. It's like, we took him on an airplane. It's like his first time ever being on like this little airplane up in Alaska. And he thought it was the greatest thing ever, but there was like no real shock and awe about it. Like, he wasn't like thinking about, how does this thing fly? What does it take to get this thing in the air? Like, none of that matters to him. It's just the fact that it's an experience and everything's just working how it should, and he just accepts it as is.
You know, it's an interesting thing that you bring that up. I remember Jay's conversation, and we were talking about VR specifically.
Yeah.
And how he put the VR headset on little Jay, and she thought it was fun to play the game and shoot the bow and arrow at the thing, and then that was it, and she just wasn't a big deal. And then him saying that, kind of like how you and I would be, which I still haven't had a chance to get my hands on a VR headset for any extended period of time yet, but just the like wow factor that we have as adults, not having seen this and having seen it literally go from the Game Boy VR garbage that was to what we have today, and like the amazement of how far things have come versus like Xander, where it's like, yeah, this is just a part of, that was a beer burp, excuse me. This is just a part of daily existence and the norm.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I guess I can kind of adapt that to like my grandparents, for instance. And, you know, how they looked at things as I was growing up, and things that they were absolutely
TV.
Yeah, because like I remember when I got a Nintendo and I got a Power Glove, I thought it was pretty cool, right? I was like, it was garbage. Let's not mistake the Power Glove as the like worst peripheral ever made for a gaming console. But it looked cool, and it was really cool when I got it. I was like, oh yeah, it's like the thing from the Wizard. This is really neat. But my grandparents like literally looked at it like it was some form of higher magic. Like, they didn't understand like how it worked.
Literally is from the Wizard.
Yeah, and they're like, how does this actually work? And they were just completely floored by it. And I think we're kind of seeing that now as parents ourselves, that our kids, when they're exposed to something at a young age, they just accept it not based on any kind of past experience. They just accept it for what it is. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, to airplanes, they don't care to know how it works. But like the first airplane I ever went on, like there was no way in hell I was getting on that jet until I knew like exactly how it worked, right? If I didn't know the laws of like thermodynamics, I was not getting in my seat. And kids don't seem to be like that anymore. Kids just seem like, oh, this is like a bus that flies through the sky. Cool. I don't care how it works. I'm just going to climb aboard. And like you said with the VR experience, unfortunately, I haven't been able to expose Xander to VR yet because my wife has some reservations about it because of some of his therapy that he has to do for vision. Vision therapy is still a big part of what he does. and we don't want to mess with that, you know, playing around with virtual optics and stuff like that. But eventually I will get him into it, and I'm gonna put it on his head, and he's just gonna be like, oh, there's a thing over there, and I'm gonna pick up a thing and throw a thing at him, and I'm just gonna be sitting there floored by like, aren't you like shocked at all about being in a different place like instantly? And I have a feeling he's gonna have that exact same reaction where he's just like, oh wow, this is a cool video game.
I'll be interested to find out how he responds to. I'll be interested to know if his dynamic with games changes at that point. If he goes from preferring to be an observer and a backseat gamer to being the one playing the game, when it goes from a 2D screen, which we're used to now, to the 3D and VR environment. That'll be something that'll be really interesting to see happen when you do get that chance to do that.
I'm actually thinking that's exactly what's going to happen. And I base that on things he does in the physical world are a lot different than what he does in the virtual world with the games and stuff. Like when I observe him, like he likes to ride his bike. I got him a bike. He was scared to death of it because he didn't know how to pedal and he didn't trust the training wheels. But I finally got him on him, and I got him riding it. And once he started riding it, he absolutely loved it. It was freedom for him, and he loves the fact that he can propel himself around on it. And for that, he still would prefer me to ride my bike with him so that we're both riding bikes, but it's not like he wants to just sit there and watch me ride a bike. And I have a feeling that with the 3D immersion of VR, he's going to be in there and he's going to be like, okay, now I can do the things that I want to do. And especially if it's like stuff that he can't really do in real life, like, you know, for instance, go out and shoot a bow and arrow right now, or go and drive a race car or something like that. I think those things he's going to immediately just like perk up and be like, oh my gosh, I want to do this. The rest of the world can just take a backseat to me for a change.
Enter the oasis. I am happy.
This is cracking me up. Siri keeps coming on my iPhone while we're talking, and neither one of us has said that. But it keeps turning on and listening, and I look over the screen, and there's like a whole paragraph of what we're saying on there. Oh my gosh, technology!
It's because Apple is always listening.
I know, right? I'm gonna tell Apple to go away for a little while. Sorry, Steve Jobs.
So you brought something up earlier that I thought was really interesting. When you said that Xander loves to, like, for lack of a better term, teach you how to play a game or do a thing.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because I wonder, and I don't know if you've thought about this or if it's come up in conversations with therapists or anything at all, but I wonder if that's him learning how to do this or that. Because they always say, you know, if you want to learn it, teach it, right? And so I wonder if his teaching you how the plane works, for example, or how the 3D printer works, I wonder if his teaching is how he's processing the information and how he's learning it himself.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I actually think that it's almost like a form of self-manipulation, because what he does is he talks his way through it like he knows what he's talking about, even when he doesn't, even when he has absolutely no clue and he's out in left field. He talks his way through it, but if you watch his eyes and you watch his mannerisms, he's waiting for you to stop him and correct him. So he's going in assuming that he's wrong, but talking like he's right. It's almost like he learned from like the Captain Picard school of leading on like how to explain things. And it's funny because I always call him the little manipulator, because he'll come in and like here would be a good example. The other night he wanted a cookie. So most kids would just be like, hey, can I have a cookie? Right? So this is what he does. He walks up to me and says, hey, do you want a cookie? He's like, do you want a cookie? And I'm like, no, I don't really want a cookie. And he's like, well, do you want a cookie later? And I'll say, oh, okay, I might want a cookie later. We'll see. And then what he'll do is he'll go get the cookie, and then he'll set it down next to me, and he'll be like, so here's the cookie for you when you're ready for it later. And I'm like, okay. And then like 5 minutes later, he'll be like, do you still want that cookie? And then he'll be like, okay, I see where this is going. And then I'll be like, no, I don't want the cookie. And then he'll pick up the cookie and just start eating it. Like the fact that I said that I didn't want the cookie at that moment. And it's like he took this like really roundabout way of getting the cookie to a place where it was accessible to him, so then he could just pick it up and eat it. And
it's just brilliant.
I feel like he takes that same approach with everything and how he's learning. Like with the 3D printer, he'll just assume, like if you didn't tell him how to use it, he would just assume he knew how to use it. He'd go over and just start randomly pushing buttons and unplugging things and plugging things in until somebody came over to assist him to make it work correctly.
Yeah, it's interesting because it almost seems like he just uses what he sees as a logical progression from point A to point B. And he's just waiting for that logic to be broken. But if it's not broken, he's gonna follow that logic thought train until it comes to an end.
Oh yeah, he'll take that thing right down into the ground, 2 stories underground on fire and exploding before he'll finally be like, okay, finally I'm gonna ask. I'm just gonna ask. but it's funny because he finds ways. One of the things that autism, most kids that have autism deal with is something called parroting. And it's something where you have a need to continuously repeat the same thing over and over again. It's something that we've had to go through tremendous amounts of therapy, and he's doing so much better now. But it used to be to the point where, you got the kids that are like, mom, 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 mom. He would do that, but with anything. It didn't matter what it was, if it was addressed at somebody, if it was just like a phrase from a TV show he was watching. And so we've been working on him with therapy to stop that by having him change the wording. So if he says the same thing like 2 or 3 times in a row, we say, okay, no, now say it differently. Like go through and try to reword it or rephrase it or restructure it. And so now he's kind of found ways to work around that, where he'll come over and he'll say something, and then I'll be like, okay, use different words, and then he'll be like, well, what would you say? And then I'll be like, well, say this, and then he just repeats what I said. And it's like, so he's still getting away with repeating something without actually repeating it because I was the one that repeated it. It's just this weird roundabout thing, and it's like you don't even realize you're being duped into it until after it's over, and you're like, that was really clever. He found a way to kind of maintain his nervous tick, but doing it in a way where he's gaming the system. And it's like, I'm very interested to see how much further this goes as he gets older. And because I don't even really know, like looking at him, if he really understands fully what he's doing. I think he just is finding clever ways to work around the problem. Like he has a tendency to ask for things over and over again. He'll be like, hey, Dad, can I play with the steering wheel on the racing simulator? And I'll be like, no. And he'll be like, is it okay if I go play on the racing simulator? And I said, no, I just told you no. Do not ask me again. I do not want to hear racing simulator again tonight. And I have to get stern with him because he'll keep pushing the issue. And then he goes, okay. He's, he wants to please. So he's like, okay. So then what he'll do is he'll say, hey, Dad, can I go upstairs and sit on the car thing? And I'll be like, because he's not using the word racing simulator.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, I don't want you to talk about the simulator, the car that's still talking about the simulator. So then he's like, okay, he'll sit there for a couple minutes. Then he'll say, hey, Dad, you want to go upstairs and play a game? And I'll be like, no, not right now. And he's like, well, is it okay if I go upstairs? And I'll be like, what are you going to do while you're upstairs? And then he'll like really be struggling. And he'll be like, can I go push the pedals on the chair? And I'll be like, oh my God, you keep asking about the racing simulator without using the word racing simulator, without using it's like, as I take words away from him, it's like he just finds other ways to reference it. And it's actually kind of funny. I usually end up laughing when I shouldn't. And
I'm sure.
And it's absolutely hilarious. But
does it frustrate him when you laugh when you shouldn't?
It does. I'm sure it does.
And
it's
hard not to though.
Not as much as most people though. You'd be surprised. I think he'll start kind of nervously laughing along with you. But you can tell he's kind of frustrated by it. But he's it's one of those things where he can't let things go, but he knows he has to let them go. So he's constantly in this state of finding loopholes to work around things. And I think that's actually going to serve him later in life.
I think so too.
But because I think that's a huge characteristic of problem solving, right? People take variables away from you, yet you still have to hit the objective. So you just find different ways to use data that you no longer have or recreate the data that you lost. And that's kind of what he's doing.
Yeah. It's so interesting hearing you talk about him and combining with what I've seen with him. It's the where he fits with the quote other unquote autism and where he fits on the spectrum. It's so interesting because I can very easily see where he's going to be, like, he already is very high functioning and he's going to be extremely brilliant, but like there's just the little aspects like the nervous tick and things like that that like you can hear in how you describe what he's doing, him actually trying to actively process those and work through them. And so it's going to be really interesting to watch him grow up and see how he adapts and where his personality is today, because every kid's personality changes over time as do interests and stuff like that. But it'll be really interesting to see how he changes specifically, because there's so much of what you're saying that's like, it's almost like he's self-aware in a way, even though he's not probably fully self-aware exactly. but like he's self-aware enough to where he's like actively working on these little things that he knows he needs to. And so that's going to be something that's going to be really, really interesting to see play out.
Oh, I completely agree. I think he's going to make a remarkable teenager, if not one that's really, really hard to keep on track. but
yeah, I can imagine.
I'll tell you from all the therapy has helped a ton, because the thing a lot of people don't understand if they've never dealt with kids of any autism level is therapy is basically like training. It's like you go into school to learn a trade, but these kids are going to school to learn how to process an emotion or how to respond to something. You have to realize that still internally their wiring is the same. You know, the way that they hear and the way that they interpret things are still the same, but the way that they're projecting and speaking and doing things that's all training that comes from therapy. So you still have to think in your head that, you know, they still are dealing with those problems internally, even though they might not be showing them outside because the therapy has helped it. And
because they've learned how to work through it.
Yeah, exactly. So you still have to understand, like, one of the things is eye contact. Eye contact is incredibly hard for children with autism. Even Xander, to this day, when you're talking to him, you have to say eyes, 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 because he will constantly look away. He cannot maintain eye contact for more than a couple of seconds usually before it gets incredibly, almost unbearably uncomfortable for him. And to get him to that point took a lot of years of therapy, of constantly pulling in that eye contact. So now he knows if he wants to get your attention or you're not listening to him, he'll come over and get right in front of you and look you in the eyes, but only as long as it takes to get your attention, and then he'll break that eye contact. He's literally using it as a tool, whereas for somebody like you or me, anybody that doesn't have autism, it's second nature for us to want to make eye contact because it forces somebody, it basically sets the context for the conversation. You're like, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, you've acknowledged me, now I know you're listening.
Yeah.
But for kids with autism, it's actually wired completely differently. That eye contact is an uncomfortable thing, and it's not used the same way. It's not seen as a way to basically handshake the modems and start talking, if you will. And so he had to learn how to do that. And you can tell that he's getting really, really good at it, but he still finds it incredibly uncomfortable. And you have to realize it's not just the eye contact. There's other little communication barriers and things in there where he'll tend to ramble. Like that's another thing that you'll see autistic kids do is they'll literally just go from making sense to not making any sense at all. And that's something that he's progressed on hugely over the last 2 years. But I mean, there was literally a time where you'd be like, "Hey Xander, what do you want for dinner?" And he'd be like, "I like the brown wheels on my car." And I'll be like, no, Xander, what do you want to eat for dinner? What do you want to eat for dinner? I really, really, really like the color red. You know, and that's not an exaggeration. And it was something that, you know, my wife and I had to get used to. We had to work with him. And still, when he's tired, he'll still slip up and do similar things to that. But I think it's one of those things where it's like, if they don't understand, if they're not processing what you're telling them, they feel like they have to respond with something. And so they just randomly grab whatever's in the grab bag of their drifting imagination and just throw it out there. And again, I mean, it's taken tremendous amounts of therapy to get him to where he's at today. And now he's in his peer group now. So he's going into the first grade.
Awesome.
And so he's he's actually going to be doing a full day for the first time this year. He's only done a half day up until this point. So he's going to be doing a full day and joining his actual class at his age group and everything. And we're absolutely like super stoked and excited about that.
How excited is he, though? I can only imagine.
Oh, he loves school. He absolutely loves school. And here's the thing that I think is really going to serve him well in life is that he loves homework. He loves talking and playing with other children. Even kids that are really, really shy and bashful and not really engaging, he'll be the one to go and instigate. He'll be the one to go engage. He's super, super polite. He'll walk up, and this we have to definitely be careful about strangers and stuff, because he will walk up to any kid or any person he sees in public and just be like, "Hi, I'm Xander. How are you?" And if they ignore him or don't respond, he doesn't get the cue that it's like that person doesn't want to talk to you. He'll keep pushing it. He'll be like, "Come on, you must not have heard me. Hey, do you want to go play? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite car?" And to see that is absolutely amazing, because if you saw him, 2 years ago, he wouldn't even acknowledge that any other person in the universe existed other than my wife and myself. If you took him places, he would play and there could be 10 other kids in the room, and a kid could come take the toy out of his hand and he would look at it like it magically just like dematerialized. Like he would not acknowledge that the other kids were even there. So he's made absolutely like huge advances. I'm super proud of him. And I can't wait to see what happens when he goes into school for the full day. Plus my wife, I mean, she's excited because she'll finally for the first time ever have like a 6-hour period of time where she can actually do something.
Yeah, I bet. So you started your YouTube channel how long ago?
Oh God, it's got to be 7 years, 7 years. I didn't really get serious about it until about 4 years ago.
And then how long did you do the YouTube channel plus work at Microsoft?
I think they overlapped about 2 years. I would say 2 years is probably a pretty good estimate.
That sounds about right. And then, of course, you were laid off / fired.
Yeah, I know. I love how everybody says I was fired. No, I was laid off along with my entire division. Literally 1,800 people. Just click, gone.
That's insane. But where I was going with that is, so in that time span has been the time span where you've been able to spend time at home with Xander and do all the I'm sure I would guess that you and Mrs. Barnacules have to be pretty involved, at least on some level, in the therapies to know what to do at home and all that fun stuff, right?
Oh, hugely. Like literally my wife had to quit her job when he was born because of all the stuff we went through, and she has never she wanted to go back to work and she's never been able to, because from the moment she wakes up in the morning to the moment she goes to sleep, she is that kid's wingman.
Yeah,
they do everything together. Like literally, we might because we have very select friends that we'll leave him with, and so it's pretty rare. So like maybe once every like 3 months we'll go out and see a movie for a couple of hours or something like that. But other than that small little lot of time, Xander is always with one of us.
Did y'all find out before he was born or as he was when he was born?
It was when he was born that we found out, but it wasn't known up until that point. But I can definitely give you the skinny on that whole thing if you've got a couple of minutes or hours or months or no. It's so what had happened with that whole thing is Xander was a planned pregnancy. My wife and I wanted to start our family on my 30th birthday. Quite literally, we just decided that was the date that we decided. My wife wanted to have a kid. She talked me into having a kid. I was kind of on the fence about it, and she convinced me. And so we started, and as soon as she got pregnant, everything looked like it was going fantastic. There was no problems. Everything looked fine until we went in for her first checkup. I think it was after about 3 months or whatever. You go into each. She was going in all the time, but I went in because this was an important one when they were doing like an ultrasound.
Yeah.
And so they went in and they did the ultrasound. Everything looked pretty good. And they checked her blood pressure, and her blood pressure was pretty high. It was on the rise. And so that was a concern. So I think they put her on something called like clonidine or lisinopril. It was a long time ago, but it was one of those blood pressure medicines that's like approved for pregnant women. And so they put her on the blood pressure medicine, and she responded well to that. So we kept going. A couple more months go by. And we're sitting at, I think it was month 6, we went in for like the next major ultrasound. And we walked in, it wasn't an ultrasound, it was just a checkup. It was just literally go in, because they were monitoring her blood pressure really closely. Yeah. And so she goes in, they put the blood pressure cuff on her. And the lady runs the blood pressure test twice, and then she said, "Hold on a second." And she unplugs the machine, wheels it out in the hallway, and gets another machine and brings it in. And we're like, "Okay," we just thought, "Okay, the machine's broken." So she brings in another machine. She does the test again. My wife's like, "Okay, my arm's getting all bruised to hell here from all these blood pressure tests." So they switch to the other arm. They run another test, and the doctor just looks completely shocked. And we're like, "Oh crap, what's going on?" Her blood pressure was over 200. Wow. And so that's stroke territory. She was so what they did was they tried to be really calm, but they're like, "Okay, we have a little bit of an emergency situation. Your blood pressure is over 200. You could stroke out at any moment. You need to calm yourself down." And my wife's like, "I feel perfectly fine." She wasn't worked up at all. Everything was calm. It was a routine thing. And so we were both just completely shocked. And so what they did was they brought a gurney over. They put her on a gurney, gave her some medicine. I can't remember. I think it was nitroglycerin or something like that, something to lower her blood pressure. and rapidly lower it. And so they literally wheeled her on a gurney across the parking lot to the actual hospital, because we were like in the little clinic area. And so across the street was the hospital where we were going to have Xander. And so they wheel her over there on the gurney. And I'm just like freaking out because I don't know what to think's going on. They haven't really told me anything other than her blood pressure's really high and, you know, she could have a stroke. And so I go up there and meet her in the room. And they've got her laying down. She's freaking out at this point, which isn't helping the blood pressure situation at all.
Of course not.
And so the doctor comes in after about, 10 or 15 minutes and says, your wife's severely hypertensive. They said that she's at risk of dying herself and or losing the baby because the blood pressure in the cord was too high. And so they said, okay, so, now this is what we need to do. They said she cannot leave that bed until she delivers. And we still got like 3.5 months to go at this point.
Wow.
And so it was actually, I think we were 11 and then a month out. Yeah, so 11 weeks plus a month. So yeah, 14 weeks to his projected delivery time. And so he's like, she can't leave the bed. And I was like, okay, so can I take her home and then she can like be on bed rest? And he's like, no, you don't understand. She cannot leave the hospital. I was like, wow. Okay, how is this possible? Like I've heard of women on bed rest for pregnancy, but I've never heard of not being able to leave the hospital.
Yeah.
So they said that her blood pressure had to be monitored 24 hours a day, and she could only get out of her bed once a day to go and basically like sponge bath herself off in the little bathroom thing with assistance, and then she had to be back in bed, so that she was only allowed out of bed for 5 minutes a day. And so I'm freaking out at this point because, I'm still working at Microsoft. And on top of all this, I didn't even mention this. We're supposed to be going on a vacation to Hawaii in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
We were literally going in and getting her last checkup, which we moved the appointment up because we were going on vacation. And so I remember panicking, going, okay, so she has to stay in the hospital and she can't leave. And I was like, okay, and she can't leave until she delivers. So she's at least in the hospital for, 3 months if he runs the term, right? And so I'm like, okay, there's no way we can go on this vacation, obviously. The doctor said there's no way her condition is going to miraculously change because they have to run a whole battery of tests to figure out what's wrong with her and why she's so severely hypertensive. And so I was like, okay, so I called up Costco, who I'd booked the vacation through, and they were completely understanding. Literally 3 days before I took the trip, Costco refunded me 100% of my entire trip. Airfare, hotel, everything. I just literally called Costco, and normally they charge like a fee to cancel that late, but they were like, no, we totally understand. This is, crazy circumstances. Yeah. And they took care of it. So at least we didn't have that stress on ourselves anymore. We were like, okay, that's taken care of. But then I had to figure out what I was going to do about the work and the living situation, because they moved her to a suite in the hospital. They had up in the birthing wing, they had these suites that you went into that had a bed. It had a full bathroom with a shower. It had a refrigerator with a little freezer in it. Yeah, and it was a room set up for you to basically live at the hospital. And I didn't even know these things existed. So
they're amazing.
So they move us up into this suite. And so I would basically go to work in the morning. I would sleep on the little couch thing, go to work in the morning. Then after work, I would drive all the way home, which was like a 30-minute drive. I would feed the cat, clean out the litter box, and then I would literally grab the mail, throw it on the kitchen table, close up the house, and then drive all the way back to the hospital, which was another half an hour drive. And then I would stay with my wife all night. And she was on a very strict diet, for the month that she was laid up in bed. She had to eat very insanely no sodium food. Every little piece of food she had to eat was just garbage. So I tried to suffer along with her, because that's the right thing to do in that situation.
Right, yeah.
And it was terrible. I will tell you right now, it's terrible. I snuck so many burgers and stuff when I was out running
say,
errands.
at that lunch break, though.
Dude, I lived at Jack in a Box during the day when I was at work. But things started to get really bad at the hospital because they put a heart rate monitor on the baby. And Xander decided that he just wanted to stop breathing and scare the crap out of us at least twice a day for that entire 30 days.
Wow.
And so what would happen is I'd come in and we'd go to sleep. And just at 2 a.m. in the morning, like clockwork, every night, alarms would just start going off around the room. You'd wake up in a panic. The lights would be on. An entire medical team would come flying through the door. They would adjust, search for the baby's heartbeat. push drugs if they were necessary, and then his heartbeat would come back. And most of the time, it was just the heart rate monitor would just lose him for a minute. But they couldn't take any chances, right? The second that his heart stops, they have to basically do an emergency C-section to get him out of there. And so every night that was happening, and I was just degrading fast. Like, my wife was looking at me. I wasn't sleeping. I was falling apart. I couldn't remember things. It was basically unsafe for me to even drive to work at that point. I was so exhausted. So my boss ended up at work saying that I could just work remotely. So for like almost the entire 3 weeks after that, I just stayed at the hospital with my wife and just occasionally went home every couple of days to take care of the cat. But I stayed in the hospital with her. And then every once in a while, when I looked like I was really bad, she would force me to go home. She'd be like, "Go home and just sleep in our bed, just so you can, so that you can get some decent rest. I'll be fine." And I maybe did that 3 times throughout the entire month that we were there. But what had happened was at the end of that month, and we thought we had to do this for 3.5 months. So it was a very scary prospect. But then it got really scary when I think it was our 31st or 32nd day staying in the hospital. The doctors came in and said that Xander's heart rate and blood pressure dropped down to dangerously low levels. And they said that we're at risk of losing him, so we're delivering him today. And wow. I was like, how is that possible? He's still 11 weeks premature. He's not even 2 pounds. How can you do that? And they're like, well, he can't survive natural birth, so it has to be a high-risk cesarean. And this is all happening. Like, you wouldn't believe how fast this stuff is happening, right? You're just like, I can't even explain it. It was so detrimental to like my mood and my state that I can't even accurately like remember what it felt like. You know how something that's like so traumatic, you block it out? Yeah. Like it's gone. It's like I remember it happening, but I don't remember the dark parts as well, because it was just that bad. And so and my wife, she's freaking out. She's crying the whole day and everything, because she's sure that we're gonna lose him. And so they take us in to the ER. And they have 2 surgeons on hand, because it's a really delicate operation. Because cesareans are common, but removing a 2-pound baby that doesn't have developed lungs is a super high risk like procedure. Yeah. So I go into this room. There's 15 staff on hand. Oh, and I should also mention the room that we were in up till that point was, I want to say, nearly $8,000 a day, because she had to have the special monitoring, and she had to have a doctor on her the whole time we were there. So we're like, okay, there's no way insurance is going to pay for any of this. Trust me, it gets a lot worse. So we go through, they give her the epidural or whatever, they knock her out, they start the surgery, and I'm in the room. And they said, and I was okay. I was literally in so much shock that I couldn't even be like sick over anything. Normally, I'm pretty faint of heart when it comes to blood and stuff like that. But I literally stood up over the curtain and watched them like cut my wife open and pull my son out. And I was just in so much awe over what was happening. Like, it just wasn't even registering to me like what was happening. You know what I mean? It was like the doctors are listening to classical music, talking about their day. Well, they're pulling my son out, and they pull him out, and he's not crying, and he looks like this little gray baby. I actually have some pictures. I haven't made them public. I might at some point. But he looks like just this little alien baby. You can see through his skin. His skin hasn't developed the pigment yet. And I'm like, he's dead. Like, that's all I could think of in my head when they pulled him out, was he was dead. And right as I had that thought, I just heard the tiniest little faint, that was it. That's all he did. But it was enough that the doctors got really excited. Like, as soon as he did that, they cut the umbilical cord. They ran him over to another team that was standing by that wrapped him in like this saran wrap like material. Like, literally they wrapped him in cling wrap. Because they have to hold the body heat in as much as possible on these little guys. And they had to intubate him. So they had to basically open up his mouth and put a tube down into his lungs. And they put him on a respirator that basically had to breathe for him. And it was like on full-blown oxygen, 100%. And he was just barely hanging on. And so they didn't even, my wife didn't even really get a good look at him or nothing. They said, okay, it's an emergency situation. So they got him into something called a draft bed immediately. That's like this heated completely microbe-free environment where you work through like the little holes on the side of it and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they put him in one of those, and they took him up to the room, and they said that we'd be able to see him once they sewed my wife up, and the anesthesia wore off. And so my wife finally wakes up after they get her all stitched up, and she's, obviously just scared and crying and freaking out. And we go up to see our son, and we still can't believe it. We look at him, they got him all wrapped in blankets, and all hooked up they had to put IVs in him. They had to sedate him with drugs. They had to put him on morphine immediately because he was wiggling and dislodging the tube in his lungs and damaging him. Mm-hmm. So they had to put him on this, and so we finally got to see him, and that was kind of a moment of zen. Like, we finally just realized that, okay, we made it this far. We might be out of the woods. And then that was very, very short-lived. The doctor comes in and tells us that, okay, he's 11 weeks premature. He's weighing in at exactly 2 pounds. His lungs are not developed. He's not absorbing oxygen well. And the doctor's like, so here's how this is going to play out. He's like, he'll need to stay here for at least a couple of months, until he can breathe, until he can breathe on his own or at least be on oxygen. And so we're just overwhelmed by this. So they move us to another room that's even like another suite, but it's got a place for his draft bed so we can be with him 24 hours a day. And the doctors that are on shift there are amazing. This was like the Seattle Children's Hospital network. It wasn't Children's Hospital, but it was one of their networks. So that they assigned a special pediatrician to him that works with prenatal stuff. And the doctor comes in and says, he's most definitely going to have some form of brain damage. They said that's just inevitable because he's, his lungs are underdeveloped. He's not absorbing oxygen well. Traumatic birth. He's not developed. So they said we just have to go through the steps. So they started by putting something on him called a Billy lamp, which developed the pigment in his skin. It's basically like a giant tanning salon that they put around his bed.
Yeah. And that's the same blue UV light, right?
Yeah. It completely
it's the
looked
same
like
one that
it.
they use for like if kids have jaundice, for example, they put them under the billy ribbon.
Yeah, it was just crazy. It's like it literally looked like a tanning bed that they just charged like $10,000 a day to use for some reason. But they put it over his bed, and he wasn't moving much at all, and that was really just like kind of worrying us. And we wanted to hold him, but we couldn't. They're like, he's too fragile. We can't move him out of that environment. And so I want to say it was a good week or two before we first got to hold him. And so they got the Billy lamps on him. His skin started to develop. He started absorbing oxygen a little bit better, but it wasn't looking very promising. And the doctors just kept reminding us every day that, oh, hey, he's a little fighter and he's hanging on good. And, here's the good things. So we're finally starting to get it in our head that, okay, our best case scenario here is that he's going to have some brain damage and he might have to be on oxygen for the rest of his life. And so I was kind of preparing for the worst. My wife was still being the optimist here, but I was preparing for the worst. And so from there, what had happened was after a week of them giving him, they had to give him IV nutrition too because he wasn't able to eat because of the feeding tube. So they were literally injecting nutrient-rich stuff like right into his veins. And so my wife, she couldn't feed him. We couldn't hold him. And then finally the day comes where we get to hold him. And they pull him out to put him on my wife. And I help transport him to my wife. And literally in one hand, I'm holding from the top of his legs to the top of his head. He is so small. I have a picture where I put my wedding ring on his arm. My wedding ring that's on my ring finger went around his entire arm. Wow. That's how small he was. Just like this little doll. And so I transport him over and I put him on my wife and he starts making little noises. And I've never seen my wife so happy, like even to this day. Like that was like the happiest moment of her life was when she finally got to hold her kid. Because most parents get to hold their kid right after he's born, and we're like waiting like a week or two. Yeah. And so what had happened was we just settled in for what we thought would be like a 3-month adventure. And during that time, because I could literally go on for hours with all the crazy stuff that happened, but he had died twice in the 3 months that we're in there, where he needed a full crash team to come in and actually give him chest compressions, and they had to pull the tube out and actually pump his mouth with a little hand pump. And those were the scariest times of my life. I was standing there just watching my son turn gray. I mean, literally all the pigment flushed from his skin and just lifeless, and then just right when they were about to give up the second time. First time they got him back pretty quick, but the second time it happened, you could tell just everybody in the room was getting really discouraged, like they were about ready to shut it down, and he had blipped and popped back. And nothing screws you up like that, Kyle. Nothing.
I can't even imagine.
No, like my memory of it is so faint because I blacked it out. It's I couldn't even tell you like what the nurse or what the doctor looked like that day. Like I was just so damaged by that, and I was sure that he was we were gonna lose him after that, and. So they got him back, and they said that the oxygen was damaging his eyes. So they said his eyes would be damaged now. So I'm like, okay, great. They said his lungs aren't developing, and so we're about, I want to say, a month and a half in. Tons of stuff happening every day, all kinds of little micro events where he's getting better, getting worse, getting better, getting worse. And so finally, after a month and a half, they call us into the meeting that we have every day in the morning. There's a meeting where we literally go in with a staff of like 8 or 10 doctors, and they even have some of them on children's up on the projector on the wall via teleconference, and they would discuss his treatment for that day. Because you wouldn't believe the manpower it takes to monitor a little preemie 24 hours a day and make sure that everything's taken care of. Yeah. So they're sitting there and they said, okay, well, his lungs aren't developing, and they said that he's going to die unless we do an experimental trial, which is not approved by the FDA. It's in medical trials, and they said they wanted to give him a steroid that would rapidly develop his lungs. They said it's in trials. It's not approved. They said, but if we choose not to do this treatment, he'll certainly die. The doctors were like literally like, this is really your only option, but we still need you to approve it.
Yeah.
So, we did. We were like, yeah, no, go ahead, use the steroids. They told us the side effects are in the trials have been severe brain damage. They said it's also caused brain swelling because the brain develops faster than the cranial cavity can grow, and they said that can lead to death. And they basically like listed off all these things, and the percentages on these things were like wildly high, like 5%, 20%. I mean, it wasn't like a flu shot where it's like 1 in a million might have an adverse reaction and die. They're like pretty much he's got maybe like a 60% chance of coming out in some kind of favorable condition, but just expect that he's probably going to have severe brain damage, but his lungs should develop. So we're like, okay, all in, let's do this. They give him the medicine, and within 7 days of them giving him the steroids, and these things were stupid expensive, even though it was a medical trial. I want to say that each shot, they gave him a shot every day, and each shot was $16,000. It was crazy. Like, we were just watching like these bills pile up, and we were like, oh God, I hope the insurance works, because Bill Gates would have trouble paying these bills. So they give him these, and I think this is the first time I've actually told this entire story. So here we go. So they give him the steroid, and a week later they said his lungs are developing like just like they had expected, very, very rapidly. They said that he has severe scarring on his lung tissue, so they basically said he'll have asthma for the rest of his life. I'm like, okay, awesome. Let's just keep adding this to the list. And but they're like, but he's alive. We're trying to focus on the positive, because, dude, there is nothing more depressing than the NICU, the high risk NICU ward of a hospital, because every single day you hear somebody crying across the hallway or down the hallway, and you go running down there, because that's your family at that point, because you never leave the hospital. You get to know these people. You can't avoid them. You're there 24 hours a day with them. And, we watched one lady, she lost one of her twins. The other person that was there, their kid had only 1/4 of their brain was functional. We literally were like the envy of everybody else, because Xander was dodging all these bullets after starting out like really in rough shape. And a lot of these other kids were actually in better shape than him when they were born, but they were just going downhill, right? I mean, it's just nobody can guess. It's just all you can do is try, and some respond and some don't.
It's literally a crapshoot.
Yeah, and so we were dealing with, it was an emotional roller coaster for everybody in the wing of that hospital. But Xander was suddenly starting to pull through, and the coolest day ever was when they took him off the oxygen and they put him on a CPAP. A BiPAP. So they pulled the hose out of his lungs, because they said it was causing too much scarring, and you can only I think you can only be on a ventilator for like a month or a month and a half, and then any more time after that, and you're basically killing yourself, because your lungs will never heal after that. So they took him off that and they put him on the BiPAP, and that was really scary because you'd watch his O2 sats. We had an alarm on the wall that would go off if his O2 dropped below a certain level for a certain period of time, and that thing would go off 50 times a day when he was on the BiPAP, and he would just start taking bigger breaths and he'd get it back, and so he was fighting. The CPAP was working. Oh, and sorry, they had to still do oxygen with the CPAP, but it was they didn't have a tube in his lungs anymore. So now we were able to hold him more because we only had an IV line and in the CPAP, not that hose that can become dislodged very, very easily. And so they'd come in every day for like 3 or 4 times a day. They'd take him out and put him on my wife, and she'd try to feed him off and on. But you had to do it in very short intervals because his sats would start dropping as soon as you took the mask off him. And so, and that never worked. It was just, we were just trying everything we could to bond with him because, imagine this kid's been, living in a pod for, 2 months on morphine every single day, to keep him from moving. And so, and they said that, they'd have to wean him from the morphine and stuff, which would make him really, really cranky. And so now we're in the end game. And I'm sure I've been going on forever and everybody fell asleep. But in the end game here, they kicked us out. At 3.5 months in the hospital, they said, he's as good as he's going to get. It's time for you guys to take him home. And we're like, no, because he's still on oxygen and he's still, he was off the BiPAP for a week at the very end. So he didn't need the machine breathing into his mouth, basically. So they gave him oxygen, but just through a little nasal cannula thing. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, okay, cool. He's good to go in the hospital, but they're like, you have to take him home. And they gave us a bottle of oxygen and hooked him up the tube and stuck him in a car seat. And he weighed 4 pounds when we took him home.
Wow.
And all I remember was that was the second most scary part of my day because I was like, what do we do? His sats drop all the time. He's always having issues. And they're like, oh, if he has any issues, just dial 911 and we'll get him back to the hospital. And that was the scariest night of our life because we were home alone with this kid. My wife and I literally military war style took shifts watching Xander. Yeah. Like literally sitting there just watching him. And we went and bought one of those motion detectors that goes under his mattress. So if he didn't move for 30 seconds, it would set off an alarm and wake the house up. And then he made it through the first night, and we got a little bit more confident. And he didn't need the oxygen after that. We were able to drop the oxygen, and he was plugging right along. He gave us a couple scares along the way. Funniest thing that happened, now looking back on it, wasn't funny when it happened, but the funniest thing was he started projectile vomiting on day 3 that we had him home. And my wife and I had no idea what to do because, it was like projectile. Imagine a tiny 4-pound baby basically vomiting 3/4 of his body weight. It was insane. So what do? We call 911. They send because we were told that no matter what, call 911 because he's a preemie. Everything is considered an emergency with a preemie. So they send the fire department to my house because they were the closest. And I remember the two firefighters come into the house, in their uniforms and stuff. And they say, okay, where's your kid? They look at him. They put a stethoscope on his back. The EMT looks him over really quick. And they're like, yep, looks like he just had a vomiting episode. He's like, because he was raspy. He was really, really, that's another thing we were scared about is he inhaled some of the vomit and he was raspy. His lungs are already damaged. We were freaking out. And the guy says, nope, his O2 stats are fine. He's like, that grumbling will clear in a couple hours. He's like, this is just what babies do.
Wow.
And we just thought, we kind of felt bad because we were like, here we mobilized the fire department to come to our house. And it turns out that, Xander basically just vomited. It was like kids do this. Yeah. And so we settled into it. Xander slept with us for the first year of life, literally co-sleeped right in between us in the bed. And after that, it was nothing but good news for the most part. After that, he went into Children's Hospital. They did a brain scan, and they said his brain shows absolutely no signs of damage. So the autism is more of a developmental thing than a physical thing. And they said we took him back 3 months later, and they checked his lungs. They did a lung stress test, and he had 100% lung capacity. So they said there was no scarring on the X-rays. He completely healed. So whatever the steroids were that they gave him worked better than expected and even helped repair the scar damage that was in his lungs. So now we have this perfectly healthy baby that just needs to go through a lot of therapy to catch up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
That's an amazing like birth story.
It's just crazy. It was a roller coaster, man. There were so many highs and lows over that 3.5 months that it just feels like it went by in a couple of days in hindsight, you know?
Yeah. We've got two sets of friends specifically that one of them had twins and they were preemies and they were in the hospital for, I don't remember how long specifically, but I want to say about a month, maybe a little less. Or a little
and it's really
longer.
common for twins too. That's another thing.
Yeah,
is there was lots of preemie twins everywhere in the ward where we.
Yeah, that's really common. And then another set of friends, their son, he was early too, and I think he was in the hospital. I want to say 3 weeks, maybe 4. I'm sure you've noticed this, but as soon as the kid gets here, it's like all of a sudden time moves 5, 10, 100 times faster.
Yes, it does.
And the perspective of time just like is completely wiped away because you're just so focused on them that you don't have any your perspective of how long things are actually taking and what's going on. Like it gets so distorted. So I can't. That must have been the longest, shortest 3 to 6 months of your life.
It was absolutely insane. Now, here's the interesting thing is I want to say that my perception of time actually slowed pretty dramatically in the first part of it because I couldn't sleep. I literally was like maybe sleeping an hour or two a day. And the doctors were even the ones that recommended that I went home and got a good night's sleep because they said that I'm no good to her if I'm messed up.
I mean, that's
so
pretty true.
Which I thought was funny because they're like, yeah, go drive yourself home and get some sleep. And I'm like, should I be driving? Like, there's a lot of stupid decisions made throughout that entire process. I will make no mistake about that. But no, I do feel like that 3.5 months went by incredibly fast. I still wake up every morning and look at this 6-year-old boy who jumps on the bed every single morning and gives me a big old kiss and says, "I love you, Dad. Are you awake yet?" And then I say, "No, I'm not awake yet." And then he goes and runs out to the living room. And I look at that and I'm like, I still have this memory that's fairly close in my mind of this just itty bitty little baby that I could hold in one hand.
And you can almost, like, I am not you, but I can almost envision that. And at the same time, I realize every day that it almost wasn't.
Almost wasn't. Yeah, no, it was total crapshoot. Like, we should have by all rights lost him on multiple occasions. Like, I'm never even going to bother playing the lottery because I already won it, you know? It's like,
no kidding.
That's how I feel. And the other thing that was really, really fortunate, and a lot of people, you know, I kind of rip on Microsoft sometimes. It's no secret, right? You know,
sure.
They laid me off after a 15-year career. After promoting me, after saying I was awesome, giving me a bunch of hero awards. I mean, I was a highly decorated employee. I was top 5% employee in the company. And they laid me off, and I was really, really bitter about that. But the one thing that I even made clear in my layoff video was that Microsoft's insurance through Primera at the time, back when they had this pre-Obamacare. Today the insurance is crap.
Yes, it was.
But back then, the Cadillac plan that Microsoft had covered $2.3 million for Xander and $488,000 for my wife.
That's amazing.
That's how much the bill was, and that was after the insurance negotiation. That's how much Primera actually paid to the hospital for that 3.5 months. And I don't know about you, but I cannot afford nearly $3 million in expenses.
Quite the opposite. Yeah.
I know everybody thinks YouTubers are like millionaires, but yeah,
that YouTube money.
Yep. And I think the entire time when we went through and factored out, because our explanation of benefits pile that we had was as thick as a phone book at the end of 3.5 months. I
can imagine.
And when we went back through it, because they said that if there was any additional expenses that we had to pay for out of pocket, we could write them off on our taxes. And I went back through it and literally only found 2 receipts for stuff we bought from the pharmacy and a total of $20.
That's amazing.
So my total out-of-pocket expense for 3.5 months, all that experimental stuff, all the crazy checkups we had to do after the fact with Seattle Children's Hospital and everything, all of that was completely 100% covered by insurance. I don't owe a cent on any of it.
Did you ever follow up? This is totally a random question, but did you ever follow up on the results of the trial of the drug that they gave Xander to see if it passed its trial phase or not?
You know, the irony is I never did. It was one of those things where it's like I almost think
I don't know if that's anything that I would actually
want
care
to
about
do
in the moment per se. Yeah, I don't know if it's anything I would care about in the moment per se, but it's like in hindsight now, I'm like really genuinely curious that like, okay, it works so well for Xander. Like, I wonder what happened to it as a whole now.
We still have the book. I know somewhere we still have the file that has all those explanation of benefits that we retained for the taxes. I should go back through there and see what that medicine was called, and go and look it up, because it would be after 6 years. I guarantee you, it'd be out of trial or they scrapped it. One of the two.
It would be out one way or the other, either successfully or failfully.
How crazy would that be if it turned out that it failed because of like, you know, massive death, and because they already told us that the trials were pretty bleak when we did it. I mean, they were already saying that the medication was pretty much a Hail Mary. They would never in a million years give it to a kid if they thought there was any other chance he could survive.
That's amazing.
So I almost don't want to look, because I think that might actually scare me.
Well,
I don't want to go look at the trial and be like, oh, we found long term that, you know, this will cause like some brain hemorrhage when they turn 10. I mean, I just don't want to know.
Insane.
I really don't.
Yeah. That it's just, I tell you what, if you find the name of it, send it to me. I'll look for my own curiosity's sake.
Yep. You also
because it's just,
it is, right? It's weird.
The fact that it was such a Hail Mary, and the chances of adverse significant side effects were so high, and yet here Xander sits today just so healthy in such a great way. Like,
yeah.
That's amazing.
And they were scared to death, man. Like when they were giving us that option, I mean, they were making it absolutely clear that there are no warranties on this. Like, this is you know, this will improve his chances, but by no means is a guarantee he'll survive. And if he does survive, he's going to have some serious medical problems later in life. Yeah. And that's the part that, like, because this is the thing that you'll notice is doctors generally try to remain neutral in every situation.
They do.
And so when a doctor's telling you that there's a good damn chance that something's going to happen, that means there's a good damn chance that something's going to happen. They usually don't throw that out there if there's a high probability of success. And so that's what really scared us about that, is everything leading up to that medication was still like iffy. Like even when they told us about giving him the morphine, because they said that, you know, the morphine, basically he's going to become addicted to it. They're like, there's no way around it. They give it to him literally 24 hours a day so that he cannot move. He's going to be like severely atrophied, because normally babies move and stuff and develop their muscles, and he's literally just laying flat on his stomach with his head turned sideways with a tube going in his mouth for 3 months. And that took a lot of therapy to rebound from too. His muscles were so underdeveloped, like, and still today they are, and his arms and his legs and his core strength. Like, even today at 6 years old, he can barely do a sit up.
Oh yeah, he's such a skinny kid.
He's like, he weighs 43 pounds, I think, at 6 years old.
Wow, that's tiny.
He's so underweight. Like, but he's tall.
How tall is he compared to?
I don't know what when we last measured him, how tall he is. But he's pretty tall compared to like his class and the other kids in his class. He's like another 2 inches taller than like everybody in his class.
That's crazy.
But he's just
he'll be super lanky and tall and lanky.
And we've tried to, like, they told us that that it was imperative that we got him to gain weight. So we were literally for a period just buying him McDonald's. Like literally every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, go get McDonald's, because they're like, you have to get him to fatten up. We'd make him chocolate milk and like fill the cup like halfway with chocolate. And the doctors were telling us to do this. The doctors were like, you have to give him stuff he'll eat because we need to fatten him up. And he didn't have much of an appetite. Like, how many kids do you know that you give them like a little 8-ounce glass of chocolate milk and they take like 2 drinks and they're done?
Yeah.
Like,
definitely not my daughter.
Yeah, I'm gonna Hoover that thing down, right? I mean, so it was really, really hard getting him to gain weight. And now today he's a great eater. Now he snacks all day long. He eats continuously, but he's still not putting on weight at the rate we'd want him to. But the doctor said that, you know, he's on the low side of a healthy weight, but he still needs to gain. Like, we need to get him to gain.
Sure.
And I do sit-ups with him where I sit down and I make him sit up in the bed and I hold his arms, because he'll have a tendency to lean off and use his elbow to pick himself up. So, because he knows he can't do a sit-up, so I'll hold his arms so that he can't do that, to force him to actually do a sit-up. I play around with him intentionally, where I'll put him up over my shoulders and then lean backwards and drop him down my back and then lean forward and make him do a sit-up. I like trick him into doing calisthenics, basically.
Nice. And then also it kind of gets you moving too, which I mean, you literally just posted a video about all that fun stuff. I still haven't had time to watch it yet, but
oh, dude, it's going great. When you have the right people to support you, anything's possible.
Oh, I'm certain of it. I know that I am definitely getting ready to hop on that same bandwagon, if you will, because it's
well, what I'm doing is working
for me too.
What I'm doing is simple and it works. So I'll give you the skinny of it because I'm sure that your listeners would like to hear about it.
No pun intended.
So yeah, I know, right? Skinny. Oh my god, I used a prayer. So I started. So my wake up call, and I've had a couple of them in my life. Right, this isn't my first diet attempt. A lot of people are really scrutinizing me heavily right now because I made another video about 8 months ago or a year ago that was said that I'm basically done being fat or whatever.
I didn't want to bring it up, but since you brought it up, I thought it was interesting that you.
Oh no, self reflection is important, right? Because the biggest thing that I found is lying to yourself is something that everybody's is just a genius at. Like
experts,
like everybody is an expert at lying to themselves, and I really needed somebody to like explain this to me to understand it. And I'll get to him in a second. Mr. John Gloud, Obese to Beast, that guy's epic. So what had happened was previously I went on a diet, and the reason why I went on the diet, and I was sure I was going to succeed then. The reason why I went on the diet was because I was suffering from really severe depression and anxiety, and I was gaining weight rapidly, although I was a lot lighter than I am today. And the internet was really getting to me. Like I was way too focused on the trolls back then, and I was going to sleep every night having nightmares about people just ridiculing me about my weight, and it was really affecting me, like mentally affecting me. So I decided that, you know what, I'm just going to start being positive. I'm going to start losing weight. I'm going to stop making excuses. But the problem was it was a lie when I did it that first time. It was a lie to myself. I was losing weight, but I was making excuses like, oh, I went and worked out at the gym for a half an hour so I can go eat a 12,000 calorie burrito now.
Yeah.
And I was doing stuff like that, and I was lying to myself, and it kept getting looser and looser and looser. And plus, my wife wasn't doing the diet with me, so I was, she loved baking stuff, so she was baking all the time, and I was eating her baked goods and not accounting for them.
Yeah.
And anyways, it was just it was falling apart really fast, and it died relatively quickly. I was only good for about a month or two, going to the gym and everything, and I lost about 20 pounds when I did it last time, but I gained it back rapidly after that. And the reason that I failed after reflecting on it and talking to John was the reason why I was losing weight was because of everybody else's perception of me. I was losing weight because I felt everybody else wanted me to lose weight, that's what they wanted. And the difference now is I woke up one morning, and it literally was just one morning I woke up, and I didn't sleep well. I tossed and turned all night. I almost couldn't sit up out of bed because my back was hurting, because I have a compressed disc at L4 and severe scoliosis and a bone spur sitting right on my sciatic nerve, all stuff that's high risk to operate on. And so I have to take painkillers every day just to function. I literally have to take, I think it's oxycodone, Percocet without the Tylenol. I have to take that every day in a small dose. I don't take a massive dose, but a small dose to basically keep me moving every day. And I was like, you know what? If I would just lose this damn weight, I wouldn't need to take this shit anymore. And as fun as it might be to take opiates and stuff, everybody's like, oh my God, opiates are awesome. No, if you take them for years and years and years, they're not, because they lose the euphoric effect and they basically become a damaging form of like Tylenol. Yeah. I mean, literally, that's what it is. It's like
a more damaging form.
Yeah. Like if I gave you one of my pills, you'd probably be like, oh man, I feel awesome. I take one of my pills and it's like, I just feel the pain go away by about 50% and nothing else changes. And so there's no like really want for me to do it anymore. You know what I mean? It's like I have to do it for the pain, but it's not like it's a pleasant thing at all. It's not. Yeah. I want to get it out of my life. So the first step in doing that is I have to lose the weight. So I told myself when I woke up, I was like, I need to lose the weight for me. And then Xander wanted to go ride his bike. Xander wanted to go swimming. Xander wanted to go do this. Xander wanted to go do that. And I kept making excuses. It's the, oh, not right now. Daddy's too tired. Oh, let's go play Forza instead. And I just realized in that moment, I was like, you know what? I tell everybody every day that I go snowboarding. I tell everybody every day that I go hiking. I tell everybody every day that I go do this and that, because I used to be a really active guy. Even at 250 pounds, I was like black diamond snowboarding like every weekend in the winter. And the truth is, when I'm telling people I do that stuff, I did that stuff in the, in the past tense, right? That's what I used to do, and I'm afraid to go do it again because I don't want to prove that what I know is true is that I can't do that stuff anymore. And even if I could, I would damage myself beyond repair if I did. So I woke up and I wanted to lose weight, and that's when I reached out to John. I'd followed him for a long time, Obese to Beast on Twitter, and I followed his journey of him losing. He went from 360 plus pounds down to 170 and became a bodybuilder. And I was like, this guy did exactly what I want to do. I need to figure out what his magic formula is. So I reach out to him that morning. This is before I even made the video. I made the video like a week after this happened. So because I wanted to make sure, that I was committed and really committed this time. So John, nicest guy ever. I reach out to him. He immediately gets back to me. He said he would be happy to basically handhold me through this whole process. He didn't want anything in return. He told me he didn't even want me to make a video. He's like, I want to do this for you because he's like seeing people, meet their goals and be healthier and happier again. He's like, that's its own reward to me. The dude's just, he's a beautiful human being. Honestly, there's not a lot of people I meet on the internet that I would qualify as a beautiful human being, Kyle, especially with all the trolls and stuff out there. But this guy is the real deal. He is genuinely like a miracle worker. So he talked to me for a little while, and I told him about some of my struggles I had as a kid and my lifelong struggle of being overweight, and how I've always been a proponent of being an overweight person. If you see any of my old videos, I always make fun of it, like, fat people can do all the same things skinny people can do. I'm a healthy, happy fat person. The truth is, by definition, I am a healthy person. I go get a physical every 6 months, which is a requirement when you have to take like an opiate-based drug for a prolonged period. You have to keep close tabs on your organ function. So I get a physical every 6 months. And every 6 months, I get the sheet of paper back that says no recommendation to diet or exercise on the back because all my numbers are perfect. And the doctors say I'm a bit of an anomaly. They said everybody else that they've seen at my age, at my weight and everything are like pre-diabetic, have cholesterol issues. None of that has been a problem. So I'm already lucky to begin with. Like, I'm starting out a diet not crippled, right? So I was like, this is now the time to do this. I want to lose this weight. So I talked to John, and he tells me his whole life story, and you can go and find out maybe you can put a link or something in the podcast to go check him out. Sure. But Obese to Beast, go check him out, his story. It's absolutely amazing. And so he agreed to talk to my wife and I on Skype. He said, let's do a Skype call. And all three of us, because my wife agreed to do the weight loss thing with me. I told my wife, I said, listen, every time I've ever tried to go on a diet where you've eaten differently than me, I've always failed. Because you put all kinds of tasty food in the house, you're baking cookies all day, and this is my place of business now, so I just smell. It's like if you worked at an IT company where the window was broken and you couldn't close it, and it was right next to like a brownie manufacturer. I mean, you'd be a fat person. There is no way to resist that. So so my wife said she's going to do it with me. And we talked to John, and we talked to him, I want to say, for about 2 hours. We talked to him for a very long time. And he went through, and what the takeaway at the end of it was, the only way you're going to be successful long-term losing weight is if you choose to do something that can last your entire life. He's like, you have to ask yourself, can you do this for the rest of your life? He's like, crash diets and stuff like that, nobody can do that for the rest of their lives. They do it until they lose the weight, and then they just go back to their old lifestyle. And if their activity doesn't float it, they just gain it all back. Yep. So he's like, it has to be something that you can do for the rest of your life. And he's like, the nutrition isn't something we're going to focus on in the beginning. He said, we're going to focus on just getting the weight, losing the weight, and bringing you down so that you can start doing those things. And so he went through a bunch of calculations with me and my wife. These TDEEs are basically total energy expenditure. And he did my wife's, he showed us how to do it. So my wife, we did hers, we did mine. And he said, use MyFitnessPal or whatever app we can to track every single calorie that goes into your mouth. He's like, yeah, it's monotonous. It sucks at first. But he's like, being able to see what's going in helps you make better decisions. And I've done it in the past. I've used MyFitnessPal before, right? So, but the problem with MyFitnessPal is you start running fast and loose. You start just putting in estimates. You can't find the food. You just start putting in random calories. And that doesn't do you any good. Then you get frustrated when you don't lose weight because you're like, oh, man, I'm always under my calories. But realistically, you're way over every single day. So he's like, we're not going to focus on sugars. We're not going to focus on that. He's like, just two things can you do? He's like, can you cut? out calories in your drinks. He's like, if you got to drink, a Red Bull, drink a sugar-free. If you got to drink a drink, drink a diet drink. If you, drink lots of water, tea, coffee, all that stuff counts. Just don't drink your calories, because both my wife and I would be drinking Starbucks every day, right? And and that's like you can drink 1,500 calories a day and not even realize it, right?
Especially in some of these drinks coming up for the holiday season.
Oh yeah. Like I remember like years ago when Starbucks had that one, like, what was it, the melted chocolate? It was like 1,200 calories in like a little Dixie cup.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing was delicious. But
it really was.
Oh man, you're ruining my diet already. No, I'm just kidding.
You're good.
So yeah, no, I got this. I got this, bro.
You got this.
So my wife has already lost 12 pounds and I've lost 17 in 2 weeks. And
it's impressive.
And I haven't been starving. I haven't been super hungry. And the way I do it is it's super, super simple. I have 1,930 calories that I computed that I will lose basically a pound a week if I only eat 1,930 calories a day. And this computation is based on my resting metabolic rate and my age and my weight being about 2,600 and some odd calories. So, and my wife computed hers the same way. And women, it sucks for women because women burn calories slower than men do. Their metabolic rate is different. So women have to even like have less calories. And now the entire diet is based off me not doing anything. This is me sitting on my ass every single day losing 17 pounds. And a lot of, and this is where John is different from everybody else. Every other personal trainer, every other nutritionist I talked about said, you have to do diet and exercise. You have to do this. John's like, let's start with the diet, fall into a groove that you can live with for the rest of your life, and then we'll add on to it as you go. Mm-hmm. And no other person has suggested that or validated. And even to this day, when I made the video, like every other comment on the video is some nutritionist telling me how this is like the bullshit way to do it and I'm going to fail. So, but John's like, no, because the thing that makes you fail is when you've basically deprived yourself of everything that you had, that you loved, every food that you loved. You deprive yourself from that, and then all you do every day is crave that food, and then that crave turns into hunger, and then that hunger basically forces you to cheat at some point. Mm-hmm. And so the way it works with this diet is I can have 1,930 calories of whatever I want a day, anything. If I want to wake up in the morning and stuff my face with 4 frosting-filled cupcakes and then just not eat anything else until I go to bed, I can do that. I'm still going to lose the weight. And
you'd be awful hungry by lunchtime.
You're going to be hungry. Yeah. But that's where the decision making starts coming in. Before, you were making your decisions based on I couldn't have something. Now I'm making my decisions based on I can have something, but is there something better I would rather have?
Yeah.
And that one little perception changed everything. Because before, I was like, oh, I can't have that. I have to stay away from sugar. Or I have to stay away from cheese. Or I have to eat only meat, depending on what kind of diet it is, right? Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this, and now when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, you know what? I'm not that hungry. I'm going to skip breakfast. Because if I skip breakfast, I can have a big lunch and a big dinner.
Yep.
Or I can skip breakfast and lunch if I had a really big dinner the previous night. And I can ride that sucker all the way out to 6 p.m. And if I want to eat the biggest, juiciest, nastiest burger and fries I can do that. And have that for dinner. And having that ability has actually helped me make great decisions. Like I eat a piece of toast with 2 poached eggs on it every day for lunch. I skip breakfast, eat breakfast for lunch, usually. And then for dinner, I can either have a pretty good sized dinner like chicken teriyaki or something like that. I'm not eating like diet foods. I can have anything I want. It's just we weigh it to make sure that the calories are right on. We have a food scale. So I can eat like a moderate dinner, and then I can snack at night. I can have popcorn, I can have cheese on crackers, I can have all kinds of stuff all the way up until I go to sleep. Or I can have a super, super big dinner and stuff myself, if I need to get over that craving, like let's say every 3 or 4 days, you get that craving where you're like, damn, I really want a burrito or something that I haven't had in a while. Yeah. You go and have that, but you save up the calories to do it. And that's all this has been, as a calorie game. So for the last 2 weeks, all I've done is eaten 1,930 calories a day, give or take 100 calories under, because usually I'm just like 100 calories. I'll just leave it on the table. It's fine. Yeah. But I've been doing that for 2 weeks, and I've lost just doing that. I've lost 17 pounds.
That's awesome, man.
And it's going to slow down too. And that's the thing he said, don't get discouraged. He's like, you can weigh yourself every day. And he's like, you might fluctuate by 5 pounds a day. He's like, it doesn't matter. Just average it over time. Data's data. So, And I stand on the scale and everything's been happening. But he said it's going to slow down. You might only lose 0.1 or 0.2 pounds a day. And you're going to get on that scale and you're just going to be like all discouraged. And that's what I would usually do back when I was working out. I'd go work harder in the gym. And then I'm like, why am I not losing weight? Oh, because I'm gaining muscle now. Oh, it's crap.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now I stand on the scale and I don't look at it as a short game. I always say, where am I going to be at in a year? You know, this 0.2 pounds in a year still equates out to 80 pounds.
Yeah, it's still a lot when you add it all up.
It's still a lot. So you have to look at the end game. And the truth is, I don't have any cravings because I've had everything I've craved. You know,
awesome.
Or I've turned it away just because I rather have something else. Like I figured out I used to love ice cream and eat tons of ice cream. I can still have ice cream, but I can only have a little bit of it, right? So I can either have a little bit of ice cream or I can go eat like 4 kiwis. like freaking, four kiwis is a lot of fruit.
It is.
You know, so it's like when you have a decision like that, you're like, oh, I'd rather eat the 4 kiwis. They're delicious and there's more of them. But it's different because it's my decision and it's not the diet's decision. I don't feel like I'm having the cravings because I know if I really, really want to go eat a McDonald's cheeseburger right now, I can. A McDonald's cheeseburger is 300 calories. I'd go have 2 of them for dinner and I'd be fine. I'd still be way within my caloric, intake for a dinner.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things that it's like you said, everybody always says, "Oh, this isn't going to work. It's not going to work." And then what people fail to realize is that any crap, terrible idea, plan of a diet or lifestyle change is going to be better than just waiting to find the perfect one.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean you won't evolve it, right?
Yeah. And so and I mean, shoot, the same thing can be said with starting a YouTube channel or starting to stream on Twitch or like anything really in life, is that any crap attempt is better than waiting for the right way to do, quote, the perfect attempt. And so just getting started. I mean, that's really where I got to the point with this podcast, right? Was that the idea had been kind of sitting and stewing for a while, and I was like, you know what? My microphone's good enough. Audacity records. I found this awesome tool, Zencaster, that records. Like, and the people that I would love to interview, like, they're going to be knowledgeable enough to have something to record locally. Anyways, like, I'll have my ways. It's like, let's just get started, because at the end of the day, it's just about getting started and making that steady, consistent progress, as opposed to waiting for the perfect time to find that viral hit that, goes massive, and you might make a few bucks off of the one thing, but over the long run, it doesn't matter, because there is no long run anymore. You
know how many people told me my YouTube channel would fail when I was running fast and loose back in the day, just making my super random content all the time? Like, everybody, every YouTuber I talked to that was at my size or bigger that I was talking to was like, dude, you're running your channel in the ground. You need to just pick one thing. You need to just stick with it. These videos get more views than those videos. You should do more of those videos. And, even despite, I'm not saying I did everything ideally, because that's far from the truth. I could have grown the channel. If I had just sold out and just did 3D printing only and just dropped everything else off my channel, I'd probably have like 4 million subs by now. But but it wouldn't have been something sustainable for me, because it has to be something I can live with, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I chose to do. But even at the sites, like, I never, you could ask anybody. Nobody would have thought I would have made it to 750,000 sub channel that gets like 2 to 3 million views a month. I mean, nobody would have thought that would have ever been true. I mean, it probably put me on that list too. But
I was going to say, I don't think that you probably even thought that to start with anyhow.
No, and what it comes down to is my editing sucks. Any person that went to school for editing will tell you it sucks. But my audience likes that style of editing because it's different. It's me. Yeah. It's a characteristic of me and who I am, and the way I slow up and speed down my voice, and the weird, little editing quirks and cues. When I take those things away and I try to make it look more professional, people disengage.
Yeah.
I've tried to become like a better editor and stuff, but it's like I almost shouldn't, because that's a part of my personality and what people enjoy.
Yeah. And there also comes to a point to where it's, with any endeavor like a YouTube or a podcast or streaming on Twitch or anything like that, it's as much about what you want and what makes you enjoy the medium and the process of the work that's required. Because, I mean, you can tell everybody out there that, believe it or not, it's work. Like, you take the glamour away of like all the views, like behind the scenes, it is work to do this kind of stuff. And I don't think that people necessarily take that those two words to heart, and so they become instant experts on the medium.
Exactly.
But and that's what YouTube comments are full of these days, I'm sure.
The keyboard warriors.
That they are. But it's one of those things that, like, at the end of the day, you have to enjoy the work for it to be worthwhile. And so regardless of what you should do, as long as you're enjoying the work, you're probably going to do 80% more than the next person who wants to do. I guess the best way to compare it would be like if someone was starting from scratch, but they didn't want to start until they were like a Hardware Connects level, like videography and editing and grading. If they wanted to wait until they were at that level to start a channel, then they won't go anywhere. Whereas you start at someone like your level, where it's just like, you know, just enough to get by, and it works for you. So you just keep putting it out and you just keep going. Like the difference between those two people is vastly different. And it's something that I personally, and it goes back to the weight loss thing too, right? Yep. Like there's just so much about it that it's really coming to fruition for me personally. That's really like, just get started. Like just do. And same thing with a lot of aspects in parenting. Like you were talking about how when Xander would be like, oh, hey, let's play, let's wrestle, let's go outside, let's do this or that. Yep. And you're like, no, I'm tired or later or whatever. I find myself coming home from work and my daughter immediately. So the front door from our apartment is directly across from the playground at our complex.
Yeah, we have a playground right next to our house too.
Yeah, and so like my daughter always wants to go out and play, and so it's almost every day when I come home from work where my daughter's just like, Daddy, hi, Daddy, give my hugs and all that fun stuff and say the hellos, and then within a minute I go play on the playground, okay, Daddy? And I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired. Yeah. I just don't feel like it. And so, you know, the whole just getting started with the weight loss.
That's why I'm doing it. I feel like I'm a good father. I have no reservations in my head that I'm a good father. The things that I've done to raise Xander and make him who he is today, the kind-hearted person that he is in like this hateful world, I'm completely proud of that. But the one thing is as he's growing, he's becoming active, and as I'm growing, literally, I'm becoming less active. And,
yes,
and I need to be going the other way, and that's why I'm doing that. And that's my motivation. But I'll tell you right now, on the diet stuff, anybody listening to the cast, if you're a little overweight or you're massively obese, like even me, I mean, at 310 pounds, that put me at 43% body fat, almost half body fat. If you want to lose the weight, the smartest thing that you can do is make sure that the people that you care about, that you live with, whether it be your parents, whether it be your, roommate, whatever, get them on board to support you. Because the reason I'm still successful after 2 weeks, and I know it might not seem in the grand scheme of things, everybody's like, there's still a lot of people that want to see me fail so they can give me the I told you so, all the nutritionists, you know?
Of course.
They want to see me fail because they don't want me to be a proof of success without some complex diet involved, a regimen of exercise. Mm-hmm. Not to say that stuff isn't going to come. I do plan to exercise once I get lighter, because that's what I want to do. And exercise isn't going to be going to the gym. It's going to be going to get on my damn bike and having fun and enjoying life. Yeah. But I would tell you right now is get those people on board, because it is so much easier to be on a diet now that this is the first time my wife's ever been on a diet with me. And by diet, I mean lifestyle change. I need to stop calling it a diet. It's just one of those buzzwords that gets stuck in your head. But now, about 3 or 4 days ago, I was having a bad day where I was like, I really want to have something bad. Like I want to go to Red Robin, have a Royal Burger. I haven't had one of those in a long time. It was over my calories because I'd already had breakfast and everything. And I was like, I wanted to do it really bad. And I sat down and talked to my wife. If she wasn't on the diet with me, she would have caved in and said, I want to see you happy. Let's do it. Yeah. Because she's on the diet with me, she said, no way in hell. She said, we're in this for the rest of her life. She's like, if you want that Red Robin Royal Burger, you can go and get it. You can save all your calories tomorrow and go have it for lunch and just have a light dinner and be done with it. And I was like, okay. So we had chicken teriyaki instead. It was delicious. I felt great after eating. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, I could give zero shits about that Red Robin Burger. Yeah. Like, it wasn't even in my head. It was like the craving had passed. I was done. But it was just I had a moment of weakness, and literally she had the power to steer me in either direction. Yep. And she was the one that helped me get back on track. And that's what you need to succeed. Is you need that person. It's like I have two people. I have John. I don't want to let John down. John, I've seen him do exactly what I want to do, and I don't want to be the guy that can't achieve what he achieved. You know, I've seen him do it. I know he's capable. My situation is literally not different in any meaningful way. You know, he figured out how to eat. He figured out how to exercise and lost more weight than I even need to lose. So I have no excuse. And the second person is I want to see my wife lose her weight too, because we've both become very overweight. And I want to see her lose the weight. She wants to see me lose weight. And now we're both definitely invested in this. And we're in it to win it. The nice thing is we got each other's backs, and you need that, because if you live all by yourself and you don't have anybody around and you're having a moment of weakness, you better call your damn friend and treat it like it's AA. Talk to them, explain the situation, get somebody on board to help you, because that's been the real change this time around.
Mm-hmm. And also having someone who has, let me take a step back. Now, I would assume that with you and Jay being good friends and all.
Oh, he's like a brother. A lot of people think we hate each other, dude. I love that guy.
Oh, no. I don't know where people would get that from.
Well, because Jay likes to poke everybody with a stick, and I'm probably one of his favorite people to poke.
Well, yeah.
Publicly, and people don't look at it as it's like a sibling poke. It's not, you know.
I mean, when y'all are visiting each other's houses, I don't know how people would get that idea.
Well, plus Jay gets really real with me too. That's the thing, is a lot of people see like Jay will literally tell me that I'm getting fat, I'm becoming inactive, I'm being lazy. You're not making videos, Jerry, and he will poke me and he will back me into a corner. And it's because we've hit that level where it's like we're completely honest with each other.
Yeah,
you know,
and I was gonna say it's great to have a friend like that who's also been where you're starting at.
Yes.
It's great to have the wife on board, because she can be that spousal, like, blunt with you.
Yep.
And that spousal slap you in the face when it needs to be. But there's something different when you have that friend that you have that level of friendship with, where it's like your spouse has to still live with you. So there's still a level of sugarcoating it, even though it's very, very thin. Yep. But like when you have a friend like, and then you add Jay's overall, just like, for lack of a better term, almost flat personality, and his dry sarcasm and his just dryness. Like when you add his personality on top of just like an honest slap in the face that a friend can give a friend, that a husband or a wife can't give each other, you know, like that's got to be super helpful too, I'm sure.
No, it is. And what it does is it comes down to respect. If somebody leaves a comment on my video that's like, you know, hey, you're never going to lose weight unless you do this, or this, I'm just like, screw you. Go away. Who are you? I don't know who you are. You've earned zero right to do anything or say anything about what I'm doing. The difference is with Jay is he's earned the right to say that. He's witnessed me. He's observed me long enough, and I respect his opinion that he's earned that right to do it. So when he says that, it has a lot higher weight. Now multiply that by 100, and you've got my wife. You know, if she says something, it's law. If she tells me to get out of the fridge, I'm out of the fridge. If she tells me she's not going to buy food and we're going to starve to death, well, damn it, I'm staking myself to the ground and becoming a skeleton. I mean, that's just how it is. That's the law of things. And now I've got two people on my counter. It's like I didn't have John come to me, obese to beast. I didn't have him come to me. I went to him.
Yeah.
So if I let him down, I went to him and asked him and wasted his time. I'm not his science experiment. I asked him to help me. And if I make him waste his time and I'm not successful, I'm going to feel horrible. And in that knowing that I would feel horrible is way stronger than my instinct to go back to my old habits.
Yeah. That external pressure.
Yeah, it's like you don't go murder people. Everybody has that day where they want to go out and just, you know, randomly murder people, right? It's not just me.
Sure.
You know, everybody has that. But we don't go randomly murder people. It's because we know the consequences of that, everything. It's very, very high on the scale. This diet now is approaching that level of seriousness. Like I know I can eat this way. I've gone 2 weeks. I haven't starved to death. I'm not hungry right now. So I know I'm not going to die. I know it's not going to be the end of the world if I don't eat Red Robin every day and a bag of chips. I'd like to. Of course I would. I'd be lying through my teeth. I'm not going to be one of those people that goes on a diet and be like, you know, like, oh yeah, no, I really love the, you know, kale shakes that I drink every morning. They're really satisfying, and I don't, and donuts are gross. Ew, I don't even want to eat donuts anymore. No, that's lying to yourself. Of course I want to go to Krispy Kremes and just mainline donuts into my mouth all day. That's fun. Yeah. That's good fun, but I'm not going to. You know, that's what
the priorities have changed.
Yes, exactly. And that's what made me fat, was that thinking. You know,
Yeah.
It was that food was a drug. When I feel bad, I go and take the food. It's no different than the pain medication I take for my back. Only it's like pain medication for the soul, if you will. You know, when you're feeling bad and you eat food, you feel good. If you're feeling hungry and you eat food, you feel good. So there's two circumstances where you do it. If you're feeling depressed, eating food, it's like there's no situation food won't solve.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you break your ankle, what do? Go lay it up in bed and eat bowls of ice cream all day. I mean, it's like food is just a natural, like, comforting thing.
It really is.
It really is. And one of the things John said that really impressed me is he said, I don't want you to make the same mistake I did when I first got started. And he said, I became afraid of food. He's like, I just ate like the same things like chicken and rice and stuff. I became afraid of food. And he's like, that's the wrong way to do it. He said, long term, that screwed him up. It did, like, when he was doing. He said he wished he could go back and actually have a healthy relationship with food. And when somebody says a healthy relationship with food, they're not saying you should always make the right decision and eat only what's good for you. What a healthy relationship with food means is that you can actually have portion control and still enjoy the things that you love. You know,
and it doesn't become a crutch.
Yeah.
For I'm sad or I'm depressed or I'm hurt or
yeah, because what about the social aspects of food?
Situation, you know?
Yeah, like let's talk about the social aspects of food, right? When you go out with friends, and this is something that kind of worried me in the beginning, and as a diet breaker, is what do you do when you go to, your friends are all like, hey, let's go to a restaurant, or hey, let's go out to a bar, or let's go out the first thing you think is, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I don't know how to enter calories for, you know, this burger on this backwater town restaurant. I don't know how, you know, I can't drink beer anymore because I'm staying away from the alcohol because it really inhibits your metabolic rate and everything like that. Those are decisions that I made. So now what about the socials?
As I'm sitting here drinking a beer.
Yeah. So yeah, you dick. No, I'm just kidding. I had a sugar-free Red Bull, which is pretty good. But it's one of those things where it's like you go out socially, so then you stop being social and you start to become an introvert, which makes you depressed. And then when you become depressed, what do? You go back and complete the cycle and start eating again. So the way that I dealt with that is I still go out with my friends. If they want to go out and eat, I just find something that I can eat and just drink like water or diet soda.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not a big deal. I went out with a whole bunch of people the other day when I went to the 3D printer party that was over at Punished Props. We went over there. We all went out to like this really nice restaurant, and I got what was it? I think it was like a beef brisket sandwich. Didn't eat the coleslaw and only a handful of chips. I was able to count the whole thing. Knew it before I ordered it, and then I just drank water while everybody else was drinking beer, and I was perfectly fine. Everything was good. We had a great time. I was satisfied when I left. And that's what you have to do, right? You have to figure out a way to still maintain those situations, because the problem with past diets where I would always be like, hey, we're going out to dinner after work or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm on a diet. Mm-hmm. Like, why in the hell can't I do that? I need to be able to do those things. Yeah. If I go to a birthday party, I still want to eat a slice of cake. It just needs to be a small slice, and I need to like cut down my dinner as a result. Like it's all just checks and balances. And once I convinced myself of that, I realized that now this doesn't have to screw at me socially. Mm-hmm. And that's another big part of dieting that I've overcome just in the last 2 weeks. Is it's like, if a friend, you know, I loved going out to restaurants. I absolutely love going out to restaurants, and I still can. I have to either plan for it or I have to make adjustments once I'm there.
Yeah. And it's a change in perspective. It's a change in the mentality, and it's all for the better.
And if you think you're going to fall off the wagon, just get that friend. Get that friend or wife or family member or whatever that literally when you hit the point where you don't think you're going to make a good decision, then turn it over to them, knowing that they'll make the right one for you.
Yep. That's a good place to end, I think.
Yep. Treat it as a drug.
Treat it as a drug. If you're about to fall, give the choice to someone else who won't let you.
Yep.
And carry on.
Damn straight.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jerry. Where can people find you on the internets?
If you guys would like to come and watch me review graphics cards with my shirt off in the shower, You can find me at HTTP. Actually, they know the HTTP part, I'm guessing. This is the internet generation, right? I don't think my demographic's like 60. But head on over to barnnerd.com. That's BARNNERD.com. That will redirect you over to my YouTube channel. Also, I have all of my Twitter information, Facebook, Instagram, all that goodness up on there. And as you know, I am a super duper social guy, as I'm sure you can attest to, Kyle.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
When he's not busy.
Yeah, so come on over and talk to me and say things to me and try to make them positive.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jerry. And yeah, we'll have to talk again soon.
We will.
Thanks again to Jerry for joining me for today's episode. It was awesome and just wow. To know what happened and how much of a miracle it is that Xander's here today. It was beyond eye-opening for me personally. Having watched Jerry on YouTube for probably 2 to 2.5 years, I never knew what they went through. And I have nothing but respect and pure amazement at what they endured. And I'm so happy for them to see where they are today. So with all that being said, go find Jerry. You can find him at barnnerd.com. And you can just find him Barnacules pretty much everywhere on the internet, as far as I'm aware. And while you're at it, searching for people on the internet, go ahead and find me. I am at Geekin Dad on Twitter, on Instagram. I am on Snapchat. I am on Facebook. I am on everywhere, really. You can also find me at geekindad.com. The show notes for this episode will be at geekindad.com/podcast. And let me know how I'm doing. It is through comments, reviews, and the likes, and conversations with you, dear listener, that I will only get better from this. So, thank you all so very much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and until next time, geek on.